Hi, hello, and welcome. I am Kirsten. This is Tristan. We are Haseya Inc. We are so happy to be here for our Monday Conscious Conversation.
Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. We're just moving on to the next piece of this conversation. So today we're going to talk about something incredibly important. I think it's all important, but today is incredibly important in the process of change, and that's subconscious momentum.
Mhm. Why our repetition matters. Ooh. Mm-mm-mm. The subconscious mind for Tristan, we're just going to talk about this right at the get,
Get
is
it?
everything. It's everything. When Tristan and I were both in our like, what the fuck moments about our life,
Yeah.
how did I get here? Why is this like my life? And how do I get it to change? And we started learning about the subconscious mind. It was like, oh my freaking goodness. Like, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't even something that we had to open ourselves up to like believe in the possibility of. It was like, huh, well, there's my manual right there. Like, that quite literally explains the unfoldment of a lot of my patternings and sufferings and behaviors and all the things. Now, what do I do with it? How do I
Oh
get it to
man.
work for me?
Exactly. And at first that makes you kind of like caught off guard a little bit, like you're guarded against it. You're like, oh, hold on a second. Like, how could I be so powerful? Because I definitely am not choosing any of this. It was the trauma, deep trauma sessions that you go so deep, and all of a sudden, the enlightenment of illuminating how big, how powerfully we have created ever since that moment. And all of a sudden, you're back in a power seat. It's like a lot of people are afraid of the trauma work, right? Because they're like, oh, hell no. No way I want to revisit any of that. No way I want to even talk about it. I don't want. And oh my gosh, I just wish, my biggest wish, and I guess that's why we have these conversations every week, because we want people to know how much life can be different and feel different. Because it was in those moments of recognizing what I had decided in that moment of pain, suffering, trauma that was still with me and I was still creating from, and I was seeing the world through that. And there was no arguing that that's exactly what I had been doing. And that's why there wasn't a whole like opening up to it, because when you make the connections, you're like, oh, there's no doubt that I have created from that ever since then. And this enlightenment piece, man, it just brings back so much power and this opportunity to create something different. And that's what is exciting. That is what is so incredibly important about this conversation.
And I'm laughing because you said that, some people are like, oh, I don't want to go there. But our like generation especially has been so open to
Yes.
recognizing, however we want to call it, like generational curses, or patterns and not passing down cycles. We've
Yep.
been so open to knowing like I'm not going to continue doing something, but you're freaking exhausted because you don't understand the difference of transmuting something versus talking about and regurgitating something over and over and over again. And so
Ugh.
today we're going to talk about why repetition matters, but in a way in which that it's going to empower you and help move the needle versus living in that pool of suffering over and over again.
Over and over again, either in the talking about it all the time or the resistance so deeply to ever feel anything connected to it, in which both of those things are keeping us in this little rat reel. And that's all I'm going to go into that right now. I could go so much deeper, but we're not going to. So, I would say that many people believe transformation happens through the big breakthroughs, right? And it does. It sometimes does. And that's what, if I hope you listened to the last conversation, because we talked about how we slowed our programs down. Like, even from the beginning, we never created anything um, other than we want to slow these programs down because it's about the time of integration. It's about the repetition that changes lives. It's about doing this work over this longer period of time to let more life come in and create new and actually get through the nitty gritty shit so that we can have this different experience. And that creates a deep transformation rather than that big breakthrough, aha, right? But sometimes those big breakthroughs do, and they do to a point. But more often, the real change, the life altering change, it happens through the small repeated shifts over time. So this call is about understanding why rapid repetition matters so much, because we're going to tell you, and we 100% believe our first session, when we go right into it, you're going to have the biggest breakthrough immediately. and you will. That and the longevity of repetition and movement is what changes lives. There was not one single atom in my body that rejected what I just said. It changes lives. That's why we're here. That's why we show up. That's why we keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you begin to understand, right? Like what your subconscious mind is.
Yeah.
Is what is running your, your daily behaviors, your habits, your reactions, your emotional responses. I mean, your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about others. And these are developed through thousands of repetitions and repetitions. But in these trauma sessions that Tristan's talking about, they are so uniquely your own. So while your trauma in that story is unique, what you've gone through, the pain bodies and the things that you've declared and said about yourself. I hate to break this to you, sister, are not unique. Other people are living these out, they're playing these out. And here, very recently, I've held a woman through an experience of a trauma, and her therapist is talking to her about cognitive things that she can do to help bring her body out of fight or flight because she's still very much in that present experience of understanding and healing. And one of the first things that they have told her to do is say, like, I'm okay, like I'm enough, I am here. And instantaneously her mind is like, but I'm not fucking okay. And I'm not enough, and like everything is shit. And so there's so many things out here that you can listen to and submerge yourself into and you can play with, that's very surface level. It's not that it's not helpful, but for you specifically to just be regurgitating something else to help you move your needle can only get you so far because you don't believe it. You're
Oh,
in the conscious acceptance that I can be okay, or I'm open to seeing that I am enough. And so that trauma work, that piece of revealing that in our subconscious mind, held with this repetition, is where we
yes.
start to see this like, holy freaking crap, my life can be different. I can feel different.
Mm. Oh, yes. And it's like, yeah, that may work at some point. It may work at some point if we start to believe it and we fight it because our whole nervous system and our whole subconscious mind that, we've created through epigenetics, genetically, and through, experiences here. And there's so many beautiful aspects of the subconscious mind, but also these limitations and these limiting beliefs about ourselves of separation and of limits and all of these things are so deeply ingrained within the brain and within the soul that just saying affirmations and not feeling them and just repeating them, repeating them, repeating them, repeating them, repeating them may start to help over a really long amount of time. And the reason it's not instantaneous is because we have so much that is bucking up to it. Oh no, that's not true. That's not true because I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. You know, a I can't amount to anything. I can't have love and all of these things, right? Love hurts and all of these things. They are so powerful that they are going to butt up against the affirmations that we don't feel and we don't align with. Okay. But like she said, when we get into that deeper state, when it's your voice battling this realization in that moment of the limitations that have been spoken, out of a space of pain and trauma and fear and real time battling that and making them from your own of no, like this is who I am and believing it and feeling it for real in that space and then carrying that forward is a totally different ball game. Totally different ball game. So, and we think about that as if we're, learning a new language, outside of trauma work and in real life is, we're learning a new language and we don't become fluent after hearing a word once, right? As children, children learn new languages really fast and really easily. Well, that's where we learn a lot of our things. Okay. That's where we are a sponge and we learn everything about ourselves, life, and others. Okay. We're talking about, me in this, mid 30s range, young and ageless, um, trying to pick up a new language. I don't hear a word and then I'm fluent. Okay. I hear it again and again and again. And eventually my brain begins to recognize it automatically, but that is not instantaneous. And the same thing happens with emotional and behavioral patterns. Each time you pause before reacting, take that breath, take that. You guys, this pause does not, we're not talking about you're in a conversation, you're like, mentally, that's what you're doing. Okay. Mentally, you are stopping the train and you were doing that. but it gets faster and faster and faster, okay? But what we're saying is because you'll instantly, your nervous system does this thing, it's like, bam, I know what we're doing here. So fast, so fast. And our brain is running behind, like we talked about in the last episode, okay? But each time you pause before reacting, each time you return to, I'm going to take one breath, okay? Because we don't have to instantly respond to everything. Don't you feel like there's just this need to like someone asks you a question or says something to you, you have to like instantly, no. Each time you take that pause before reacting, each time you take and return to that breath, each time you respond with awareness instead of habit, ooh, you're teaching your nervous system something new. And slowly that momentum begins to shift.
It was like a breath of fresh air. Goodness. If you've felt called to do anything with us in the past, and you like have seen the offering for our like our community, our group coaching, and your body cringes because you're like trauma work with other people, I think not. That experience right there that Tristan's talking about is like why group coaching can be so palpable, and when you're starting to build conscious connection and friendships, because you actually get to do that. You don't do that in the real world where you're like, hang on a freaking second, like you get to be fully in your integration process of, um, let me take a breath, like let me hear spirit speak, let me hear my authenticity come through, and
Yeah.
starting to build those new neural pathways that we talk about so much, versus being with your old besties that you've known for 15, 20 years and they're like, are you glitching? Like what's
Oh,
happening, and then you leave the room and you come back and like you've got the sweat coming down your back because you're like, they definitely talked about me while I was in the bathroom, but I'm fine, everything's fine.
it's a beautiful invitation though, because like I know from experience between your marriage, my marriage, our friendship is the more we recognize how powerful that pause is, and like if there's a moment of time where the pause needs to happen, it's recognized by the other person of, okay, this had the opportunity to trigger something and there's a pause. Okay, like it's different, it's comfort, it's understanding, it's taking more time with our interactions rather than um just reacting all over each other all the time. Like it's a beautiful, and it really is just a pause, a breath, and like I see what instantly came up and I didn't let myself react out of that. I let my brain catch up, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. We don't always give you guys something tangible necessarily, but in this conversation, we really want you this week to just pick one small practice, something really simple. Maybe it is this, right? We're talking about the conscious breath during a state of stress or reactivity. Pausing before we respond in a conversation, whether it's that family group chat or the girlies, all sitting around with cocktails, noticing when your body and emotion rises. That is a small practice, noticing when something shifts, when you start to feel something, or before that story even begins to build in your mind. We don't need to do it perfectly, and we don't have to sit there and do it all freaking day long where we become like stressed and worn out and exhausted from our awareness, okay? And then just repeat that practice whenever you remember. Because again, that repetition creates familiarity. It creates safety within the body. When we start to feel familiar, because we are creating new neural pathways, we're creating that new direction, just like we're rewiring from when we operated from trauma. Now we're
Mhm.
operating from a space of safety. And that is when we can really start to allow things to form. Because when we are in a state of crisis, it's not the time that we create. It's not the time that we need to reinvent the wheel or reinvent ourselves. We need to whew, pump the brakes, be still for a second, come back to some version of homeostasis within that nervous system, and then consciously direct. So just knowing that transformation rarely arrives after a dramatic moment or as a dramatic moment, like da 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 da, like here you go, here's your new identity. More often, it's really quiet, and it's that consistency of those things that are done behind closed doors and the conversations that we're having with ourselves and what we're informing time and time again, those small shifts. So if you're feeling like your growth is slow and nothing's happening, it's okay. You are practicing, and doing these same things again and again is creating change. You're probably doing it exactly right. because repetition is how the nervous system learns a new way of being. It's how we shift from survival and get into authentic creativity and step into our infinite potential to live the lives that we're so boldly desiring to claim and to have.
Mm, absolutely. And I just heard this comment. It was like, dude, the world is on fire. Why are we talking about these little things? Why is this seems so small? And it's not. It's not so small because when we can get in touch with who we really are and we can do this deep work. This is as deep as it gets, right? Of that self-discovery, because we're all running around triggered by things that are not true, right? At our personal level. You know, I'm not important. Like, what power do I have? And I'm not worthy. I'm not this. And the world is so loud right now that it's a bunch of ping pong balls bouncing around in a big, and it's just like bigger and bigger and bigger. But even at the smallest level, there's no control, right? And so one piece at a time is us remembering who we are and being more grounded and sturdy in our being and what we're committed to creating. And one piece and one piece and one domino and one domino and one bigger domino, you know, we're not as affected by the world. You know, we are not of the world. Okay. We're here to create in it. We're here to be who we are in it. And right now, you're seeing about 7.8 billion people and 8 billion people in the world that are being of the world. And so, and feeling very out of control right now. And so I feel like anchoring and becoming more in touch and more in touch with who we are is, you know, how we change everything as those really grounded pillars of light and love and peace and being able to be conscious stewards of ourselves, our communities, our homes, and the world. So that had to be addressed. We love you so much, and we're going to continue this conversation. We'll have that downloaded for you too. Love you.